3, 2, 1. What's going on, everyone? It is CriminalCast, brought to you by the good folks somewhere. We don't actually have sponsors, but we do have a great panel of criminals tonight. I have got the fantastic Skip and Tosh. How you doing, Skip?
Oh, man, I'm doing good. I love this dang book. We're going to talk about it, but I'm doing good.
Oh, yeah. And then I also got the enigmatic Nalo. Thanks for joining us, Nalo. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing terrific. Had a good night on the town, plotting some crimes, and ready to talk some books.
Sweet.
Yep.
And then the man who always gets listed last because he's the biggest star of the show, featuring the one, the only Eric Breen. How are you doing tonight?
It's on a need-to-know basis.
Oh, ho, ho. All right.
I'm doing well. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, it's good to see you. I don't get to talk to you guys near enough. I feel like we used to talk so much, and it's like, let's do a show together. And now it's like we talk on Showtime, which I love doing, but man, I miss you guys.
Miss you too, Ash.
Oh.
That's why we're back. Oh, well, that and Brubaker, of course.
Do the show together, 3-4 times a week.
Or that.
Every night,
might have
criminal
a
night.
answer. Hey, every night someone's doing a crime.
So I'm pouring myself a frosty beverage to start the show. You always have to have a nice drink. And so tonight I got my usual bourbon, Maker's 46. But I gotta chase it with my Coke and coffee. You ever had this before? It's literally Coca-Cola with dark blend coffee, whatever that means. It's a man's drink.
I have not. Maybe that's why I'm still a prepubescent boy, so I'm not allowed to have that, Ash.
Oh, you should try it if you like coffee, and you're not disgusted by coffee and Coke. I actually really like it.
Maybe when we get older.
Oh. Well, you've got a long way to go, Breen, but someday you'll be old enough to drink coffee.
I think I've already had my second childhood, so I should be able to drink it soon.
Oh, man. So tonight we're going to be talking about Fade Out, The Fade Out by Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips. If you're just joining us for the first time...
where were you?
Yeah, where were you? If you're just joining us for the first time, this is CriminalCast. It's a podcast, panel-style podcast that we do live on YouTube. This is airing on June 23rd. It's typically every other week on Wednesdays is the rough schedule now, subject to change. Don't hold us to anything. But we're putting these on a podcast format too, so you may not be hearing these live if you are listening on a podcast. Thanks. Appreciate it. Hope you enjoy what you're hearing. Feedback is always welcome. If you are listening live, please throw a like or a dislike. Whatever, just show us what's going on. Comments are welcome, feedback. If you really like what's going on, you can tweet out to your favorite social media groups to help share the message because, it's not like I can afford a marketing department. We talk about all things Ed Brubaker in the independent world. So I guess not all things, but it's called CriminalCast because the most famous thing that he's done in the independent world is his criminal series. And most of his books that aren't part of the criminal series still feel like they're criminal books. This Fade Out is the one we're working on today. It's a 3-part series because it's a big book. If you're getting the whole thing, it's 12 issues in the floppies. We're doing Act 2 tonight, and the next episode we'll be doing Act 3. What are you guys drinking tonight?
I got my... This is called White Cherry Gatorade? Glacier Cherry Gatorade.
Oh.
It's the white flavor, and it's really good.
You always have the exotic Gatorade flavors that I've never even heard of before.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I go with the lime or the blue one or the fruit punch, the red one. But most of the time, I'm trying some new ones.
Blue is a color, not a flavor.
Oh, are you sure? I don't know. You should ask Gatorade about that. I think it literally says blue on there, doesn't it?
I gotta say, I'm feel so old that like Gatorade to me is the colors. I'm like, I want the orange Gatorade or the blue Gatorade, the purple Gatorade. Nowadays, it's all these fancy names. I can't keep track.
It's tough.
What about you,
yeah,
Eric?
It's good.
Are you?
Well, if you'd been here for my temperance lecture before the stream started, you'd realize that you are George Thorogooding it tonight because I'm drinking Coke Zero.
Oh, well, good choice. I gotta say, good choice. And Nalo, how about you?
I have a glass of orange wine.
Oh, orange wine.
Ooh.
What
Somebody else
is
skipped it.
orange wine?
Well, I'll have you know of the proletariat class that it's just wine that it has skin contact, so it doesn't matter what grape it uses, but it will turn orange as opposed to red or white.
Wow.
So it has like a certain consistent flavor because it like is like fermented with the skin.
Well, Nalo, we appreciate you agreeing to stream with the hoi polloi tonight.
Wow. That sounds something like I want to try. I've never heard of orange wine.
Yeah, it's I only heard of it like in the last 2 years, but the one that I have is pretty cool. It's called Mixtape and has a cassette on the bottle.
Oh,
Rad.
yeah. I gotta try this thing. Well, very good. I hope you guys that are listening in have a nice beverage. Doesn't have to be alcoholic, but if it is, hopefully you're of age. We don't want to contribute to the delinquency of minors, just to the delinquency of adults. Tahilam is here the first in the chat, and so I want to congratulate him. Hopefully you guys have read Fade Out because we're going to spoil it for you tonight. And we don't like spoiling the books. We want you to enjoy them in all their glory. These are some of the best comics you're going to get on the shelves. Of the four of us, I'm the new guy. I kind of came into Brubaker last, and so I'm kind of discovering him. These other guys are more the experts, but I'm telling you, I'm in love with these books. They're in another league. There are few comics on the shelf that come to this level of writing, in my opinion. Unfortunately, that's the case. Like, as much as I want to celebrate Ed Brubaker, I kind of wish everything was this good, but it can't be. If you are missing out, if you're just kind of stopping by and going, what's this all about? Pick up a criminal book. You can start almost anywhere. That's one of the beautiful things about Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips' work. Don't want to actually slight Sean Phillips, the artist. These books, you can pick up any of the they're designed to just sort of pick up, and the criminal books all connect. Fade Out, some of the other books that don't have criminal in the name may not actually be connected, but they're designed, you can just pick them up in any order. You don't have to worry about it. Check out the previous videos that we've done. And I guess we'll get rolling. Does anyone have anything they want to say before I kick things off to Nalo to get us going?
Someone take away Ed Brubaker's pen or his MacBook Pro. This dude is on fire, like constantly writing. So just the best stuff in all of comics. I don't have enough money to collect all of these, and I still trying.
Plasma.
I love this stuff,
Sell
man.
plasma.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's worth it to get more Brubaker. I would sell more plasma to get more
It
Brubaker.
actually is. No taken.
I will do things I will not speak of to get more Brubaker.
More of this.
Yeah, well, I have something to say.
Yeah.
I did some back issue buying for the first time in a while, and I wound up getting like almost every issue that Brubaker did of the main Batman run.
Oh.
Definitely some hints of his style, but the art is it's like worse than the animated series.
Ooh.
He ain't lying.
I'm not lying, but I'm hoping it'll add value one day to my Brubaker collection.
Very nice, very nice. I heard that you picked up some other books today too, not just.
Yeah, well, nothing on my pull list came out this week, but I did get a Midtown flash sale on indie books and was able to get a lot of Mind Management and some Fade Out, as well as some Jonathan Hickman indies for like $2 and less for many of the titles. All of them were $2 or less.
So is that, I hear that sale is still going on, is that right?
I don't know for sure. I just check it out though, because I think a lot of people don't know Midtown does ship, and they do an amazing job, like in terms of packaging. So they have deals all the time. So public service announcement.
Yeah.
Follow them on Instagram or Twitter or whatever.
Nalo sent some screen caps he picked up from Midtown, $1.79 an issue for fade out, like original fade out floppies, and apparently you got a whole stack of a lot of stuff, and that's a great deal, man. I mean, this is a 12-issue series. I think they're pretty thick books, but if I don't know if they have all the books, but if you could get all 12 books for less than $2 an issue, I mean, that's a steal.
But there is one problem with them.
What's that?
They don't absorb liquid.
Hey, but you keep that. What happens in the backstage stays in the backstage, right?
Hey, you know, it got both
you want
of
to go
us.
into what's going on in the bathroom?
It got both of us, so it's, you know.
This must be an inside joke that I wasn't a part of.
Yeah, both of us spilled shit on our floppy to a fade out.
Oh my goodness! You
We were
both spilled
both
shit on your fade out?
Yeah.
In different places, not the same.
We were met up in this bathroom at this dive bar, and we both had our issues.
Yeah, you know that bar where they always go to in Criminal. Yeah,
The Undertow.
yeah.
Oh my goodness! You guys are killing me. Well, this is why I read on my iPad, so I don't have to worry about spilling drinks, because I am hoity-toity.
Well,
I'm
get
one of those
pinky extended and let's go.
I'm one of those high-class criminals. All right, Nalo, take us away. Lead us into the glory promised land of the fade out so we can start talking about this wonderful book.
Okay. What is the issue number?
It is issue number 5 through 8 tonight. That will be
Okay.
Act 2.
Number 5 is The Broken Ones. I think this title is pretty literal compared to the other ones, and plural as well, so there's more than one broken one. But one of the most main characters of this issue is Gil, and as we know previously, he's been moonlighting all the kind of scripts, and he kind of took the fall as being a communist for Charlie, our main character. And in this issue, it's kind of set off campus. They're doing a shoot somewhere for like a Western film, and of course Gil has to follow in the shadows because he has to, do the writing every night. But just it's been bugging him, this whole murder mystery thing, and I think he decides to leave his hotel room and just head out for a night of drinking and getting into trouble. And kind of while he's out, we see Charlie again, and he's kind of like reminiscing about Val and how he's missed her, and kind of thinking back to the last time they've been up there, or at least one time long ago, off-road, out of Hollywood. And he's thinking kind of how it was kind of creepy because that's also where Mr. Camp lives, who is the kind of founder of Victory Pictures and used to have his own movie studio. And Val kind of reveals that, it's okay if we snoop around because, I used to grow up there. And that's kind of sinister in its own right. And we kind of feel Gil is kind of, feel something sinister here, and he just isn't going to take it anymore. And while he's out, Charlie's reminiscing, Gil goes out to the bar, and he actually sees the old man himself in present day, and he's with some, B actress, and he says she's not young enough and starts, smacking her. And, he's kind of lost his marbles, but he's clearly a real sick guy. And so basically, Phil Brodsky has to come and, take care of the situation, and he sees Gil there, and he already sees him as an untrustworthy guy, so he has to pick him up and, take him for a ride. And what we find out while Charlie's kind of reminiscing is what Val had actually and them seen when they were walking through the woods up there was this creepy cramp guy actually filming a young actress tied up naked who is screaming for help. And she slaps him in the face, and they untie him, and he's like, "I remember you. You were always this way as a youngin', essentially." So we know that kind of sketchy stuff goes on out there. And what we learn from Broderick while he takes Gil for a ride is that the kind of movie star that's fashioned to be the boyfriend of the replacement for Val, I think Maya, is actually gay, and he's been messing around, and that's going to get into the papers. So to teach him a lesson, Brodsky kind of beats the crap out of his new boyfriend he's met in this off-road movie set to teach him a lesson. So that's kind of another broken one. And basically we find out Val is kind of broken because she's grown up in this place where, very suspicious things happen. And Gil is kind of broken. He's out of a job. He's being bullied by Brodsky. He doesn't know what to do, or he wants to kind of do something. And at the end of the issue, we find out, what Brodsky had done had basically made that movie star drive his car right off a cliff. And so all his kind of actions of telling people he's looking out for themselves while being security to keep everything tight of all these secrets, he's kind of crossed the line at this point because he drove someone to literally drive off a cliff. And Gil really here, we end the issue where he's decided to take a stand and just kind of take these kind of people out no matter what, and kind of act on his idealistic views that kind of got him kicked out of the industry in the first place. So that's what I took from this issue as what happened. What did you guys think, or what did I miss?
I really liked the theme of the broken ones and how literal it was this time around. And even for people, you brought up, the Tyler, the gay actor, like, the hunk, and they were trying to keep it under wraps that he had multiple, different male lovers and stuff like that. That was being an issue for the studio. Brodsky, the studio muscle, studio security went and broke that guy's face. I think they even said in the book that he, when he was done, he looked more like hamburger meat. So like even, apart from some of like the internal emotional parts that Gil is dealing with, Charlie's dealing with, Val is dealing with, you got someone like Brodsky where when the break-in needs to be done, he'll go and do the break. So it's just, again, Brubaker just taking the theme and just driving it home through multiple different characters, all with just such lived in and kind of to a point, like, as honest as a fictional tale can be, but very honest feeling interactions.
Mr. Marine.
Okay, it's the late 1940s, and when Brodsky, he had a great point. He goes, as soon as you're done with this guy, he's going to go to the press and spill everything, and we can't have that. We have too much invested in you. So he takes care of he cuts the problem off at the knees, and I don't think he didn't foresee Tyler Graves driving off the cliff. It is that he's a very fragile guy living a lie, and it kind of hit him. So he says he didn't, but I think he tried to kill himself. But I don't know. You can't pin that on Brodsky any more than you got a guy living a lie, and it just reality hit him in the face. So that's what I took from that.
Absolutely.
Once again, I think that's one of the wonderful things about Brubaker's writing is that he doesn't always put things in, cement. Like the things that aren't crucial to the story sometimes are left a little ambiguous, and you can kind of interpret them different ways. And I really like that. I really like that he doesn't feel like he needs to hammer everything into you. Like, you're not going to understand what I'm writing, so I'm going to make sure I over-explain everything. And it's interesting to always see, like, every book we do a review on, there's a scene where one of us took it different than the rest of us. Like, well, maybe it was like this. And I think that's great. Like, I think that's really cool how we pull different inferences of the story. And it's not like it truly 100% matters to the overall thing. But for our personal experiences, we're reading the books, that's the way we see it. I'm not really sure which way I see it.
You bring up a really good point with that. And of course, Skip and Breen, you've been highlighting Brubaker's writing, but for me, you've just made me think of this. It's kind of like a next generation of Hemingway, who is kind of famous for writing just very objectively, like, he did this happened, this is how he felt. And you kind of your mind kind of automatically creates the picture of like what's happening in those books. And I feel like Brubaker, a lot of those narrations, he just tells you exactly how the person was feeling or what was happening, but through then the kind of the artwork and the facial emotions, that's where all the ambiguity comes in. And it's amazing he leaves so much unsaid and allows so much to also then be said in the art.
Yeah, because it's not even, we don't even know for sure if he tried to kill himself, because in the next issue he's really concerned about how he's going to look after the bandages come off. And there's also
my interpretation was he was driving so fast because he was so angry.
Or he was just emotionally distressed. But Montgomery Clift, who obviously this guy's based on, he had that accident filming Raintree County. I don't know if there was studio pressure involved with that, or I don't know the circumstances behind that, but I'm sure that was Brubaker's inspiration to toss that in. It was just off by about 6 years.
I like how the studio tries to buy him off with the car, right? Like they just went and like beat up his boyfriend because they can't hurt him because he's the star, right? They can't leave marks on him. It's like, oh, we got to keep your pretty face, but I can hurt this guy. And, they beat the crap out of him. And then they know, okay, the star's all pissed off. So, hey, buddy, here's this new roadster and all this stuff. And they're pairing him up with Maya to make him look good in the entertainment press. So, keep all the moviegoers all happy and excited about the Hollywood limelight, and he's just had it. Like it backfires. Like everything that they're trying to make him happy, it almost makes him worse because it reinforces how he's just a tool for these sickos. And that's really what drives him even, like everything that he's doing is they're causing it, making it worse. And it's just, I don't know. I just like the juxtaposition of like, hey, we're going to do things to make you happy. And they're actually driving him to this, and how all these people who are like the stars are the ones that are so unhappy. And that's usually the it actually is the opposite of what Hollywood always wants to portray, right? Like most people like dream like, oh, I'd love to be a movie star, how glamorous it would be and all this stuff. And then here we are reading this story, and like everyone who is the movie star is like miserable.
If you go back a couple issues before, he played the game. He punched he wasn't in on that fix when they had the guy grope Maya, whatever her name was, and he punched the guy out. He was playing the game. But again, Brodsky's not wrong. Damn well when Graves gets done with that boy toy, he's going to go spill the beans because that's human emotion. That's how humans behave. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those. It doesn't make what he did right, but he was right more than likely. So
he was right in identifying the problem. It was just overly vicious in like how he handled it.
Oh yeah,
right. Like that was the thing. Like you could read it and go, because I'm right there with you. I'm like Brodsky's a smart guy. Like he's very good at what he does. He understands the problems. It's just tough because you're like, okay, this kind of needs to happen. It makes sense, but man, is it dirty? Like in this whole Hollywood business, like you as a reader, at least for me, I found myself kind of getting sucked into it and going, man, I just feel dirty. Like I understand why things are happening. It's not just because everyone's just evil, mwahaha. It's everyone's kind of just looking out for themselves, and everyone's kind of trapped into this little thing that they've made called Hollywood, and everyone is basically a victim of it.
Something else to kind of add, given that this is Act 2, we ended on kind of a cliffhanger of Act 1 with the horn-rimmed glasses man and the burnt-down picture studio.
Yeah, good point.
And here we see something about like the dirtiness of like pictures being taken in the woods. And that guy is nowhere to be seen or found in this issue, or no real developments there. So there's even dirtier things yet to be found.
Speaking of dirty things, also we left in the last volume, we had a revelation about this girl Maya, who's sort of Val's replacement, and she's being groomed to be the next big starlet. And we find out that she has a backstory to her life. She was married to this Mexican guy, and of course that's problematic and everything. And Brodsky kind of took care of him in a dirty fashion. And Maya kind of is okay with it because she wants to be a star, and her husband's kind of dragging her down and all this stuff. And it's kind of dirty and scummy as well. And then we get into this issue, and Dot, which is like the PR girl who one of our main characters, Charlie, is kind of a little bit smitten with, kind of likes or whatever. He's kind of forming a relationship with her, but, kind of not. And Dot's like, just as things start to get going, I don't know, it's like he's trying to work things out with her, and then she ends up kind of pushing him with this starlet. And we can see the motions, like where she kisses him. Or no, that's not yet. I'm sorry. I misidentified the blood on his cheek. So maybe I'm jumping a little bit ahead. But I felt myself really weird, because in the last issue, I felt myself really going, man, you're scum. Like, I just hated how, when I found that revelation about Maya and how she treated her husband and was, went off to be a star. And then now in this book, I'm kind of finding myself liking her, and I feel dirty because of it.
Well, we don't know that much about her husband, or if he's that great.
No, we don't. But based on what we do know, and, I don't think he deserved getting that beating. And, I personally identified on the last episode of that scene when she kind of leaves him, and you could see, like, he's like, I'm never going to stop, caring for you, right? And she's just real cold-hearted bitch. And the way the scenes were portrayed was very much like she's, like, puts her career ahead of him, which is a common theme in writing. And it made me feel like, oh, man, I don't really like this woman, like, because her husband, he's not good enough to be a Hollywood husband, so he's got to be left behind. And anyways, I'm kind of jumping ahead, so I don't want to we'll get more to when those scenes become relevant. But it just reminded me of something that was important in the last issue that carried over in this issue, and how I found myself getting sucked in to these characters. And I was like, man, I hated you last volume, and now I'm like kind of falling for you. Because Ed's writing is so good. These characters are so vivid. I just get lost in this story because every character, even the ones you don't like, even like Brodsky, right? He's just an animal. He's a cool character. Like, you're just fascinated with the dealings of what these characters do. Go ahead.
Oh no, the wisdom of Brodsky, like almost like the clarity that he has, as he's talking to Gil about, Don Quixote and Don Quixote's story, and how Don Quixote is really the asshole of his whole story because he has, this, eccentric, view of the world, almost
Basically,
like
that
hallucinating.
view is outdated already.
Right, yeah, very outdated, and Don Quixote, in a sense, expected the world to kind of bend to his will and the view of what it should be and who he was within the world, and then him applying that to Gil in such a way and telling Gil, like, you're the asshole of your own story, Gil. You are the reason for your own trouble and travesty, and Brodsky being right about that just kind of. Even, shown to his own value within the story. So again, to Ash's point, Brubaker makes the characters, even the characters that are not favorable, he still makes them valuable, through, the virtue that they show, or in Brodsky's case, and in other cases, other things. And yeah, just another sign of a masterful writer.
Well, I think we can probably go on to the next issue here, unless if anyone's. I think I've said everything I wanted to say about the first.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. Definitely ready for talk about the second one.
All right. Well, the next issue is called "To Set the World on Fire," and I think where you just ended, Skip, kind of is what we are going to see unfold for some of the rest of the book, where Gil is going to act on his ideals, and maybe the title is on setting within this little world of the fade out we've seen so far on fire. We didn't really cover in the last issue, but Dottie has been given Charlie the cold shoulder ever since he was dancing with Maya. But it's clear that him and Maya are just kind of friends, or at least they think they are. And she's like, oh, just send some, just tell Dottie you're sorry for everything. That'll work for her. And it turns out he sent her the flowers, and when he went to go talk to her, she basically sets him up to replace the movie star who drove his car off a cliff for the opening. And she's like, you're gonna be perfect for this because you're not threatening and you're lame. And Dottie kind of looks really great here and is ecstatic and grinning, maybe because of the flowers. But when we go back to, Charlie getting ready to go out for that night, it turns out things are really bad between him and Gil. He's still pretty upset about the night that Gil had went out and Brodsky had caught him and is just generally annoyed with him. But we kind of find out that Charlie's really more upset that he just couldn't get any writing done still since the war. So he's kind of taking it out on Gil in some respect. And so he just goes along with Dottie's plan and, goes out with them to this kind of opening. But Gil is, not going to rest. He, like we said last issue, he's ready to take them down. So he meets up with, I think, a crime writer friend or a fellow communist or something to that effect. Starts pitching him a murder story, which is essentially what happened to Val, and starts asking him how, in the story, quote unquote, someone would go about doing XYZ, how someone would, bring this to the press. And at the opening, Charlie is kind of having a lot of anxiety because, Maya is just taken in the spotlight. She's a movie star, and he's kind of stuck in the past. He's just a moth, he says, trying to get close to the flame, but ultimately he's just, a nobody, even if he's her date tonight. And Maya's kind of laughing it off, like, these aren't even my fans. They're just told to, yell my name, and she's in the moment, and he's kind of really caught up in the past. And maybe that's why he can't even write. And at the party, Maya realizes, I think it's her husband, potentially, is the trumpet player, or one of the instrument players, saxophone player. But
yeah, the band is Desi Arnaz.
Yeah,
Arnaz, and her ex-husband plays in that band, so she's like,
I forgot what instrument her husband plays.
A trumpet player. You're right.
Okay, well. The other actor, essentially, is Jack Jones Flapjack. And essentially, Charlie realizes he wants to go kind of talk to her because we find out that he was a child actor who was kind of grew up with Val on this kind of camp productions sketchy compound. And, he starts, insinuating to him like what happened when you guys were growing up there, and he was like, mostly it was great, but some fucked up shit happened. Rich people have to act like they're the emperors of Rome. And he then tells them about that flashback in the woods where they saw that photograph of the distressed woman tied up naked, or her photograph being taken, and kind of tries to insinuate like, maybe that could be connected to her dying that quick. And he's like, yeah, man, you're killing my vibe. And then he, kind of catches up with Maya, who's been talking to her ex-husband, storms off, and just gives him a big old kiss. And
no, she's not talking to her ex-husband. She was talking to Desi Arnaz.
Desi Arnaz. I guess I missed who this Desi Arnaz is.
I Love Lucy.
I see.
Have you ever seen I Love Lucy?
Yeah.
Lucy.
I'm bad at names.
No, it's fine. A lot of people may not know this because it's generations ago.
Nalo, you got some planning to do.
I watched
yeah.
it. I forget the
So
names.
I didn't even catch it at first. I was like, Desi Arnaz, that's a name. I recognize the name, but I couldn't put two and two together. Because of course we know him as Ricky, the character Ricky Ricardo.
Ricky Ricardo.
Yeah. But anyways, continue. I'm sorry to interrupt your.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, I didn't catch that. Thanks. That's a nice detail. So I guess Maya has history with a lot of instrument players. But yeah, we see that Gil is busy at work, and there's this nice kind of monograph about, that they both admit that they're alcoholics, but they both have different ideas of what drinking is good for. And for Charlie, it's to forget everything. And I guess for Gil, it's to think you're a genius in the moment. And we see that Charlie and Maya actually did sleep together. So their relationship goes deeper than, Dottie kind of thinks she's the puppet master and just toying with him and setting him up to be the loser date with the movie star, but it actually leads to something. And Gil is hard at work at sending very threatening letters to Victory Productions, letting them know that he knows everything. So he wasn't working on the script that night. And yeah, basically Gil and Charlie's relationship is a kind of a lie and very distant at this point, and that's where we end. What do you guys think?
Well, this is where the this really picked up for me. This overall chapter, the volume of the story, Act 2, this was the issue where things started picking up. And I really liked some of the things that I didn't catch in the first pass, which part of the whole band scene, when she shows up and she's like, oh, my husband's, in that band, or my ex is in that band. Let me see if I can get to it here. She has a glancing look at the trumpet player. There's a scene here where it says, she misses a step, follows her eyes to the stage to the trumpet player. So I didn't know this on the first pass, but that's the position that her husband played. He's not there, right? She was expecting her husband to be there because he's in the band, except he's not there. When I read it the first time, I was like, oh, she's just like, there's a new guy in the band. And she kind of explains it off that way. Like, who's that? Like, oh, you don't know Flapjack Jones? And she plays it off. She's kind of lying because it's not that Flapjack's in the band. It's that her husband's not. There's no trumpet player. And I just thought that was very interesting because as you get to know how the story plays out, we find out that Flapjack is part of this camp that they were in as kids. It's really pretty disgusting. We think about all the, over the years, it's been a long time. Corey Haim and so many child actors talk about how Hollywood is full of molestation and, things like that. And you can tell, even though they don't really come outright and say it, Brubaker really implies that these were kid actors at this camp. And the most Flapjack will say is like, yeah, some really fucked up shit went on there sometimes. And you can tell when he's having this discussion that he's just like, dude, I don't want to talk about this stuff. And, that is important because it keys into Maya's character about why she's kind of messed up in the head, right? And why I think that she treats her husband shitty. There's so many things, and there's so much, like I said, it's the depth of these characters. They feel so real because Brubaker makes their lives so deep. Like, he may not explain everything to you, but you see, if you look deep enough, there's all these like clues and that motivate these characters. And you said it really great too, Nalo, about how Dottie, she's like this PR mastermind, right? She like hooks up people and makes everything go. And I think that she was mad that Charlie wasn't giving her the attention, because in that first volume, she goes on a date and then she finds out like, oh, she's not into me. And, she had that whole scene and he's like, she's not into me. And they're both thinking they're not into each other. And so he asks Maya for help. And Maya legitimately is like, here, this is what you need to do, because they're not planning on hooking up at this point. And so he goes and makes up with her and gives her flowers. And then you can see how happy Dottie was. And she's like, oh, okay. And these little machinations of like, I'm going to send you up with the movie star. You're going to feel like a loser. So when you come back to me, I'm going to look like such a queen because, you couldn't have that. You're going to realize what your level of expectation should be. And never realizing that dude can land a movie star. Like, you done messed up. But he's kind of messing up too, because I think Dottie is the one that's really has his best interests at heart, even though she's kind of doing some weird things. I think Maya's not, she's messed up in the head. I don't know. I'm still lingering on what she did with her ex-husband. But again, like, I care for all these people. No one here is a saint. You're not going to read a criminal book and go, any of these people are wonderful, but they're so real. I just get lost into caring for them. And at this moment, you're just like, yeah, good for you, Charlie. You're getting something good. And then you have to stop and think about, wait a second. Except, oh man, if Dottie finds out, like, it's just weird. I feel like it's like it's like a big soap opera. Am I wrong about that, Eric? You like soap operas?
No, it kind of does feel like one.
Anyway, I'm done on that. I've talked too much on that issue.
Yeah, I'll throw my 2 cents in. one of the things I mentioned 2 weeks ago was how I kind of likened this to those Max Allan Collins Nathan Heller books, where they weave factual events and real life people into a fictional story. Well, the writer that Charlie was meeting with was Dashiell Hammett, and that's mentioned earlier in the book, but that is definitely him. And people will know him. He's the one that wrote The Maltese Falcon and The Thin Man. He also wrote a book called The Glass Key, which is a very underrated Alan Ladd, Brian Donley, Veronica Lake movie. So he's one of the, he was right up there with Raymond Chandler as far as the great authors of the 30s and 40s. So that was my favorite part of the book, was, mixing that in.
I did not know this. This is good information. Helps me appreciate the book more.
Well, you spend a couple years watching nothing but old movies and you learn things.
One of the things that stood out the most to me in this issue, of course, we to go back to the title of this issue, to set the way from the scene with Brodsky, he was convinced that he was going to take action in some way, shape, or form, and through this, he had found himself at another location where he ran into like another writer that he had known, and he set up, to have a drink with them later. Basically, he was acting as if it was some assistance or some advice on, some writing that he's doing right now at the time. That's how Gil had set it up, and the writer was like, okay, yeah, sure, like I'll go over that story with you. And he said it was a murder story. And it was really interesting because we come back around later and then we see those two guys talking as they're at the bar, and they're having discussions. In particular, the one scene, what I loved about this is because it spoke to two different books, in my personal opinion, that Brubaker had written. So it was very meta, this part being in here. Although this came before the other two books that I'm referencing. I've got some like echoes of Pulp, and I also got some echoes of the last Reckless book that we had just written, Friend of the Devil. And it's all based off of what this guy was talking about, because they were talking about Pinkertons again, because it was supposed to be like this detective type story, and there were Pinkertons involved. So the guy that Gil asked for help mentioned Pinkertons, and Pinkertons were also part of the Pulp book. So I thought that was interesting that had kind of made it out of the Fade Out into the Pulp book that we all loved so much, or at least most of us that have read it, because it was great and up for an Eisner for the year. But also the other thing is, they were asking about the motivations of this character, and the guy continued to tell Gil, like, rich men are greedy, but their currency is secrets. I guess once you've got all the money in the world, that's the only thing left to bargain with. And that reminded me of some of the ideas that the villain from Reckless, Friend of the Devil, was talking about to Ethan, the main character in that book, how he was talking about all these rich guys down in Hollywood. Like, my power over them was secrets. I got them to do all of this, crazy ritual, sex and, and some tied into murder and whatnot. And then I held those secrets over them, and that's what gave me the power. So that was the biggest thing. I mean, like, there were so many other things that happened in here, and I think y'all covered the most important narrative ones. But just as a Brubaker fan, and this being a Head Brubaker podcast, that meta, like, that was just so meta for me, and it just jumped out. So that's the thing that kind of rung the loudest for me in this issue.
I definitely caught the Pinkerton thing, and I think that one thing Brubaker does is, like, go walk out on the street and ask someone if they know what a Pinkerton is. They probably don't.
Right.
But if you look up what it is, it's this sprawling, private spy / security organization that used to chase communists and other things, and they still exist in some form. And I don't really know what that means, but I like that Brubaker kind of brings to surface things about our history and culture that not you aren't gonna just come upon that easily without reading his book.
Fully agree. Absolutely.
Yeah, they were a lot more powerful and prevalent in the 1800s and the early 1900s, but I think after the World Wars they kind of faded off. And other.
That's what they want you to think, Ash. That's
Well,
what they want
maybe,
you to think.
maybe. So, yeah. I also, I guess now that I'm coming back, I like. I don't know if I like it. It sets up for a good conflict. The breakdown between Gil and Charlie. First of all, I find it interesting how alcohol is getting involved, like because they're both alcoholics.
They're both fading out.
Both fading out. But it's really driving a wedge. Like it's Brubaker's absolutely not, even though he's got characters smoking and drinking all the time, he's definitely not one of these people who's just like, oh yeah, drinking is great. Like this is a huge problem. And Gil, we know Gil is a true friend to Charlie because of what he's done. I mean, he sacrificed his career to take a fall. And you don't do that unless you're really a true friend, but yet, you know, he's getting in the drinking and stuff and it's letting it draw a wedge and he's treating Charlie like shit. Charlie in turn is letting his drinking let him mess around with, you know, people he probably shouldn't be, letting him forget about Gil, you know, what maybe he needs to be a friend to Gil. And really they need each other right now because they're in the thick of this mess. This whole story is about the death of Val. And the only reason why Gil is the way he is because Gil's this ideologist, and Charlie told him, Val didn't kill herself. She was murdered. And Gil, his conscience, he's the kind of a guy who's like so heavily principled that he would take a fall for his buddy, you know, so he can't let it go. And I'm sure that the drinking is just exacerbating his lack of control over his emotions and stuff.
Well,
and
it also says that he feels that he drinks because it makes him feel like a genius.
Well, sure, there may be that, but I think...
No, meaning when he's thinking about the case, he's probably just so even more convinced about his morals and why this is the right thing for him to do.
All of that may be the case, but what I'm focusing on more is the result of his drinking, not necessarily the cause of his drinking. And it sucks because these two really need to kind of be on each other's side and be there for one another because the whole system is going to really be out to be against them. But this is kind of coming in between them. And of course that's going to make for a good dramatic story, but it just kind of like, as a reader, I'm going through this. I'm like, oh no, damn it. You know, like, cause they're both going off and doing stupid shit. So, any other thoughts on this issue?
To say, I think the title is part of the title of a song from 1941 called "I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire" by the Ink Spots.
I
don't want to set the world on fire.
By the Ink Spots, you say?
Yes.
That's interesting. It can't be a coincidence that there's an ink spot on every issue of these books.
I don't know.
I mean, I think Ed Brubaker, he strikes me as one of these people who's really well read, and he's, you know, also probably really well familiar with these old pulp and noir films from the 40s and so forth. Because it just feels like there's just so much knowledge. Like he's like almost pulling like he lived through these times, which he's not that old. But
well, get that sense from the floppies because they cover a lot of the movies. But I wanted to add, I love how classic and cliche it is that like Gil trades in secrets by like pretending to have the information. That's just such like a classic trope.
Right. All right. Well, it looks like we're are we on to book 3 yet?
Do it.
Book 7.
Sorry, yes. Issue 7, part 3 of volume 2.
All right, so we are officially halfway through the Fade Out series. And I think from here, everything is all downhill.
In true Brubaker fashion.
The world has been set on fire. It's just going to take us 6 issues to find out what that means. I think you guys will have to help me out on the summary here a bit this issue, so I'm going to go quicker than the other two. But it's called The Sound of Waves, and here I think, Eric, you were bringing up earlier how the movie star, maybe didn't want to commit suicide because he's very concerned that he's going to look ugly. This scene opens up with him in the hospital, and Dottie kind of, managing things as we've known to see her do. And the movie stars just like, keep this animal Brodsky away from me. I don't care if I'm in trouble. Like, just, that guy is the worst. And she's like, don't worry, he's pretty busy. He's off on some secret work for the boss, which is most likely, in response to Gil's threat. And quickly we cut to see how, juxtaposition from Dottie. Now we get back to Charlie, who, they're supposed to kind of be together, but he's actually on a secret bungalow getaway with Maya. And they're drinking. It's super nice. But Charlie's like, hey, did I hear a phone the other go? And he's like, yeah, it was Dottie calling. And he's like, how did she know the number? She's like, oh, I gave it to her. I got to go on TV for my fake boyfriend who just drove off a cliff. And so basically their getaway is ending early. And most of this issue is them having kind of a fantastical time together, on the beach. I think that multiple Brubaker stories in both the criminal world and elsewhere, we get a lot of kind of love escapades on the beach. So this issue is pretty poetic in terms of like just the inner monologues of like Brubaker, and kind of some bonding between Charlie and Maya. And so we have some pretty intimate scenes, but ultimately that kind of ends in, Charlie seeing Val kind of appear as a ghost or a vision to himself. And, he's just he can't forget about what happened in Germany, or he can't write, or he can't forget about her. And he's just kind of still lost in the past, as we heard about in the last issue. And so as she goes off to do her movie star business, and as, y'all were discussing in the last issue, how alcohol is a serious issue for these characters. She goes out to drink and starts drifting off into a darker place where, innocent kids and dead girls are hanging out with creepy old men. And basically some other douchebag walks in and it's just like, look at his Captain Backstabber himself. Like, you completely threw Gil under the bus. Like, you're a nobody. And so this really sets Charlie off for probably it being more true than the guy even realizes, and, throws him a sucker punch and then basically gets the living shit kicked out of him. And this, for me, is one of my favorite scenes of the whole series. Is, he's in the bathroom, pretty messed up, and some guy just kind of is blurry in the background, like, hey, you're gonna probably have to fix those. And then he's just like, oh shit, like, that's the guy with the Harmon glasses. That's the guy I've been looking for. And this guy's like, real chipper with a big grin, like a real G-man, like, I'm a real big fan of your screen works, and the work you've been doing ever since. It's almost like you haven't been writing it. And we definitely have a lot to talk about. And like, kind of slips him his card or a note or something to that effect. And Charlie's like, I've drifted into a darker place in my mind while drinking, and now I got the shit kicked out of me, and now I'm in a really dark place with that sick gut feeling I've been thinking about all this time. And it's very convenient how this guy who we saw at the end of Act 1 was looking at him at the fire of the movie studio just happens to appear and tell him how big of a fan of his work he is, because he's been following his work all this time, and slips in the card. And Charlie's just like, man, I guess calls Maya or gets Maya for help. And when he reaches into his pocket, he realizes the note says, call me, we need to talk, it's Tina. And he's kind of like, what the hell? Like, what just happened? And Maya's very upset because, her ex-husband used to get beat up like this. And, she's like, you're a writer. You're supposed to be boring. Don't you know that? Like, what are you gotten yourself into? So happy to hear what you guys thought about what happened on the beach that I skipped over. But I think a lot happens in, just a few short pages after the bulk of the issue as well.
Well, that beach scene, I don't know. I don't know if Ash is going to be able to show too much of that one for too long.
We are not for kids. folks. This is not a show for
it's
kids.
not something that Batman does. Kids.
And I was going to say we can definitely rule Charlie out. He's not Batman. And
but didn't Brubaker write Batman? Are we sure Charlie's not Batman? Brubaker wrote Batman.
Well, yeah, we just saw he was Batman doesn't go down. Remember?
He's got a bat cave. He goes down on something. I'm just saying.
That was Harley and Ivy.
Oh, that was Harley and Ivy.
Oh yeah, Charlie, Harley.
Yeah.
Kind of rhyme, yeah.
Telling you, he's been hanging with those Pinkertons. I don't know. Anyway, this was my favorite issue of the volume of Act 2. And in part of what did give it away really was like the whole getaway and the time that Charlie and Maya kind of got to share together. And it like, I think part of why I enjoyed it so much is I'm so used to Ed Brubaker, like doing like, the tense writing, and then Sean Phillips doing these tense scenes, and they build the tension so well, and they only relieve so much of it and just at the right times. But to see this whole scene play out, and it wasn't just a few pages, it went over multiple pages, and even had its own stages of like this love affair and these two people that kind of live these crazy lives, especially for Charlie, living this life amongst this crazy time of trying to get to the bottom of this murder, of this up and coming starlet. And we get twisted and turned into like from all these harsh, tense scenes and colors to express those, to like all these blues and this, and this very like sensual scene that's that builds, romantic tension, and and to see Charlie in that light, usually he's kind of middle of the line and may get a little spicy, but to see him kind of be like, be this romantic guy and this man of action. We went from just not too long ago, them trying to snap pictures of Maya and him, dressed up being there with her, but the photographers being like, hey, you're ruining the shot, pal, get out the way. So like society seeing him like that, and that's seeing Charlie in that way, and then to seeing what it's like when the cameras aren't there and he's dancing with her, and then he rips off her dress and and then like lays her down on the bed and do what Batman doesn't do. It's just like you have that gear as well, Brubaker. Like you can just do that too, and like and Phillips, Sean Phillips, and Elizabeth Breitweiser, like that. I have those as like banners and like screenshots or whatever, or, background pictures, desktop background pictures, if you would, just because it's so beautiful the way that it's laid out, and even up until like the first part of it when they go all the way down, and then the end of that portion of the love affair is just like the waves. And it goes back to the title again, The Sound of Waves. I guess he always just hooks me on whatever the title of the issue is going to be. That ends up being what I get hooked on. But that's it. I just had to gush about like that scene and get all mushy and gooey on y'all. Here's some napkins. Sorry about that. Whoever wants to talk about it now can go.
Well, I guess I'll jump in because this is where I kind of jumped ahead before. I read this all as one volume, so I didn't think of it quite as separated into floppies. And so this scene, I remembered it very much because it was very impactful, this whole thing. And this was the whole part. I agree with you. It was really nice to see, this scene play out. One of my favorite scenes outside of this book was I think it was in the original Coward book, where he's the main character is with that girl and they're at the farm. And it had a similar type of feeling too. It was like just peace. It's not the tension, not the, I think this was even more elaborate than that. And by the time you get to this stage, you're on issue 7 of this series. These characters are so well formed and developed. Like I said, I did not like Maya in the previous volume, not because she was necessarily a bad character. I just really identify with her husband and the whole scene. And I just have a personal thing against like women who want to put career over their man type thing. And I just felt like, I was like, oh, you're just really superficial. I didn't know her as well back then. She's a starlet, but she, but she's a real person, right? And so Brubaker always, every person in the book, whether they're good or bad, is always this like real person. They come from a place. And so I started to warm up on her. I like Charlie as a character, right? He's got all his flaws and stuff too. I start to like her because she's being good to Charlie. And you like these characters, you see them come together. And even though the back of my mind, I'm like, nah, wait a minute. What about Dottie? You know? And we're going back to what we were talking about with, you know, Dottie doing the whole scheme. Like, yeah, don't worry. Go be with Maya. Right. And you could just see it in her face. Like, yeah, you'll go back to me. He gave me the flowers. It's all going to be great. You know, I don't have anything to worry about. She's a superstar. He's just a writer, whatever. Like, that's the safest place to put him, is with this untouchable. But see, Maya's not actually yet the superstar. Like, she makes statements in previous issue where she's like, they don't really know me. They just think they're supposed to know who I am. Like, things like, because she's on the cusp. So she still thinks like an everyday person because she hasn't lived the life of the movie star for so long. And that's my take, at least. And so there's these real moments. She doesn't identify with these Hollywood actors. She's just a normal girl. She identifies more with people like Charlie. That's why she's got a husband who was a trumpet player. Like, she doesn't come from Hollywood stardom. She's entering that world, and you can kind of see she's on that trajectory if she survives the process. And I think Dottie makes some hints at like, dude, it's not going to work. But I don't know. I'm kind of like in the weeds now. I'm talking about this, but it was refreshing. I like to see true Brubaker fashion. I see this happen, and I'm like, I've seen him do it so many times. This is bound to explode in everyone's faces. Every time main characters find happiness, something goes tragically wrong. You're just like, no. Go ahead.
Do you think you maybe should come up with a different choice of words when we're talking about an issue that had what it had in it?
What did I say?
Everything's going to explode in somebody's face.
Well,
that's spot on.
So Skip brought napkins.
Yes, he did.
I did.
He's doing his own gushing over there. So.
Oh my gosh.
CriminalCast gets a little messy sometimes, folks. Wear goggles.
This is why I bring the whiskey. All right. Someone else take over.
Nalo.
Nalo?
Yeah. Sorry, I thought I was muted. I was going to add that the beach scene kind of reminded me of the colors of My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies.
Oh, I haven't read that one yet.
Yeah, definitely. Good call out. Definitely.
But basically, this issue is my favorite because I like, the mystery the most, and why this book was a page turner for me originally was the horn-rimmed glasses man. And so after, a decent amount of Act 2, we're getting into it. Just this ending for me of that guy that he's been looking for or inquiring about just showing up at one of Charlie's lowest points in the bathroom and just knowing a lot about him and insinuating a lot and slipping him a note. It's just so ominous, and that's what really ramped up the story for me.
So you guys know who it is. I stopped because I'm still the new guy here. I didn't read past volume 2 because I kind of like when we do the show. Like, I'm hoping that if someone in the audience, they're doing along with us. I don't necessarily want to. I want to be able to be surprised and talk without spoiling. I'm not saying anything negative to anyone who has. So I haven't read ahead, so I don't actually know who the horn-rimmed glasses guy, what his role is.
What did you think of that scene when he showed up in the bathroom?
I loved it. Like, I was like, what? I like that he's this ominous character in the first volume, and then now all of a sudden I kind of feel like he's a life raft. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's just a red herring. Maybe he is.
Or is he?
Right, yeah. I was like, well, maybe that's... But the feel that I got out of this issue was like, oh... Maybe this is sort of, the lifeline that's going to help Charlie find his way out of this mess. I don't know if maybe he's a Fed I don't know what he is. My interest is 100% piqued. I'm like, what is this guy's role? What does he care? Why does he care? Why is he showing up? What's the big deal? And it's doing what writers should do, is grip you to want to know more. Like, that's one of the strengths of all these books, and in this one in particular, I think I'm hoping I'm right on this. The reason you guys like the Fade Out so much, this book feels the strongest with characterization. There's a huge cast of characters in this book, but every single one is at least interesting, if not, completely compelling. And every time someone's on a page, I just want to know more about him. There's never a part in this book where I'm like, oh God, get back to the other guy. Like, you've ever read some stories like that where you're in with character, and then it cuts to a different scene with other characters. And you
100%,
don't care.
man.
You don't care. You're like, no, go back here. Who's this guy? What is he doing? And you learn about him, and as they develop, you're like, oh, give me more. And that's what the Fade Out's doing for me. It's even more like the criminal books tend to be a lot more about the plot for me. Like, I'm there's this heist going on. Like, how are they going to get out of it? Like, but this one, I don't even know what the plot is yet. Like, there's this mystery. Someone's dead. Characters are having things go on, but I don't actually know. All I know is them. And
that's all there is.
And they're along for a ride, and I'm just on the ride with them, and I love it. Yeah.
What do you think, Breen? Any last thoughts on this issue?
No, I think you guys summed it up better than I could, and I'm on the clock, and we've got one more issue to do, so why don't we go ahead and get into it?
Well, on that point, I think, given that we're on the clock, we also might have to break form, because I didn't get to fully finish reading this issue, but I can do my best to give a quick summary. So here we are on Dead Giveaway, and it opens with Brodsky is at the hotel, and basically it turns out that the notes have still been coming, and I think they're demanding not that much money at this point, only $2,000. So he's pretty peeved off and kind of looking to figure out what's going on and find who might be behind this. And this night is essentially a Halloween party or some sort of costume party to that effect. Mm-hmm. And we see Charlie kind of having like flashbacks or thinking about maybe Gil's wife. But he's been thinking mostly about that note that the kind of horn-rimmed man slipped him, and who that guy might be and what's really happened. And so a lot of the party happens at this costume party, and I think he's kind of out there looking to get further on this mystery. And he was supposed to meet Maya there, but he runs right into Dottie, and he's dressed up as kind of this mummy-faced person who could also be mistaken as the actor who got his face all messed up. And Dottie's kind of making fun of him, like, you better not be falling for Maya. That would be so dumb. Like, she's not for you, without really knowing that they just had this whole, weekend getaway together. So, yeah, you guys have to help me out with this issue, but essentially, someone finds Charlie once he takes off his costume and runs right up to him, and seems to be this Tina that the horn-rimmed guy had slipped her, that needed to talk, and she's like, what is wrong with you? I told you I needed to talk. And we get a quick flashback of some more degenerate acts happening with him and her for that kind of faded out night when Val died. And he's like, sorry, I didn't know your number or what. And she's like, well, this Brodsky guy is, asking around about that night where Val killed herself. And, we got to be careful where we go. He said that he came and basically threatened me. I lied to him and said I don't know anything about you there. But, someone's bound to, mention that you were basically with Val to the very end. And she's like, basically you should skip town. And basically then Maya finds him and is like, oh, thank God. Like, I promised my ex-husband's wife, like, I'm going to, find him. He's basically, at his lowest physical point possible due to drugs or drinking mostly. And it's basically, they have some heart-to-hearts that you guys can help me fill it in on.
And real quick here, it wasn't her ex-husband's wife. It was his mother. because
Yes,
she
no,
hasn't
say that.
he hasn't moved on from her, just because I think that's an important.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, sorry I didn't.
That's
get
cool.
to
That's
fully-
cool. I just wanted to make sure that for people getting the explanation, they got that he hasn't moved on. So keep going on. Nalo?
Yes. Anyway, sorry. Let's just maybe we can talk all together will be best. But the cliffhanger or ending of this kind of issue is that Charlie basically gets back to his apartment after that party and working with Maya, and basically finds out that Gil is the one who's been writing these ransom letters and is kind of the one that's causing a lot of issues and causing even issues for himself because he doesn't even know his own involvement in Val and the night that she disappeared due to the fade out. So. My apologies for not being able to fully read this issue, but since we're also running out of time, maybe you guys can help fill in what I missed.
Well, they
I
also
wanna throw-
find the husband.
Mm-hmm. What'd you say, Bree?
I said they also find Maya's husband.
Yeah, that's
Mondo.
who they went out. So when
Yeah.
Maya, just to clarify, when Maya shows up all distraught, she's like, "You got to help me," and Charlie's like, "What's going on?" And she's like, "Can you just not ask questions? Like, help me, So they go, and as they're in the car ride, she explains she's going to get the ex-husband. She's like, "It's not going to be a problem, is it?" And he's like, no, I'm cool. And she's going to take him to the mother. So they show up at basically the equivalent of a crack house. It's like a heroin den or something. And dude, I mean, the dude's just lost him. His life is just turned to shit. Like, he's lost his wife. He's just doesn't have anything. And we find out that basically Brodsky beat the shit out of him. Like when he beat the shit out of him, like he broke his jaw and everything. Like he can't even whistle anymore, much less play the trumpet. So he's fucked. And this is all, of course, because of Maya. And it brings it kind of back to full circle of like the first volume. I was like, what? And so, this is what the whole car ride is kind of about, explaining all of this. And then once that's over, we see Charlie kind of going back to his apartment, and he's kind of pondering over, all these things that are going on about Brodsky and all this stuff. And, about Val and, the whole thing that this book is about, right? The death of this starlet Val. And he notices the trash can, and he's like, it's right then that he sees the crumbled paper on the floor. And somehow he just knows, oh shit, fucking Gil. He's always been a terrible typist. So Gil is the reason all this, the anthills, the ants are all upset because he's been stepping on the ant mound, because he's the idealist and he typed up that letter, I know who did it. We saw earlier, in the earlier issues where the studio exec guy had the thing, like giving $1,000. And so Gil is basically trying to blackmail the studio, and hell's about to break loose, I can see, because of this book. Skip, what are your thoughts on this issue?
One of the things I want to highlight about, well, actually, I'll come back to that when we give like our quick little closing thoughts. But I always like how it, of course, comes back around, to the title. So what I liked so much about it, A Dead Giveaway, is that as Charlie is going through, kind of, the whole thing with Drake Miller or Millar, whoever, the rimmed glasses guy, the mystery figure who he thinks might, have the most knowledge about what happened to Val that night and her death and her murder. He's like he's going through all of this and trying to put it together, even as he's at the party, kind of still thinking about it, trying to piece it, and then that serious situation with Maya, needing his help to go to the crack house and get her husband, and as after that wraps up and he's walking in to his house or to the place that they're at where they write, and sits down, and then he looks at the trash can, and like you said, Ash, like he sees the the letter, and it's the same page and the same typography and font as what we saw that the Thornsby, the studio head, had received in his paper as like a ransom note.
OBS.
Okay.
Give me a second, rebooting it. So no one heard probably the last 30 seconds.
Okay, no problem.
All right, we're back live.
Okay. But yeah, like there's a plot within this, and within the plot, we get introduced to it, and then we break away just to learn so much about these characters, and the interplay with these characters is so rich that when we do dip our toes back over into the plot, I feel like it has that much more weight. And since so much character work has been done, like I said, the tension is that much more palpable. Like now Charlie knows that Gil is getting his drunken bright ideas, which equal to bad ideas, and is making more of an issue, not keeping Charlie in the loop on how they're going to take action, and just heating up things more instead of covertly trying to get the information, find out through the means that Charlie has that won't light all their asses on fire as well. So it's just, I just love how it will kind of always come back around. But the journey to even get to that part is just so enjoyable and masterfully crafted that every panel, every page, is just a joy.
Well said, Mr. Breen. I know you're not a writer, so you're not boring. What do you got to say about this?
Well, my esteemed colleague, once again, said it better by far than I ever could. So I would just say, the stage is set. The pieces have moved into position. The end game is nigh upon us.
Yes, it is. The glorious end game.
Yeah, I feel this is like a perfect act 2. Like, it just sets it up. Act 3, of course, is where everything, comes together. The climactic finale. All the cards are about, or all the dominoes are about to fall. The whole Tina thing threw me out of left field. I love how they brought that back, because in the first volume, she's just some girl that he hooks up with in the coat room or something. And so you as a reader don't even remember. I didn't remember who she was. I was like, what?
I didn't even remember that even happened.
And then you see the one panel and you're like, oh yeah, like you're that girl. And so it was like such a perfect way to display like Charlie's memory, because he's just like, whatever, who the hell are you? I don't know. Oh yeah. And it just, I love when a writer can do that, when the writer can take you and make your brain sync with the character, and so you completely get what they're thinking. I thought that was pretty masterful.
So what do you think, Ash, about the fact that the Hormran guy is connecting him with Tina, who's filling him in on Brodsky on the snooping around?
I don't know, because one of the things that Tina reveals is like, number one, Charlie, you were blasted out of your mind. You barely remember like even what was going on that night. You weren't the only one. There was other people involved. I'm trying to find that where it was in the comic that she tells him that. Where was it? She did a pretty big revelation. I thought it was a big revelation. Is this it? Yeah, he says, listen, Tina, I'm actually a bit foggy on that night. Who else did we leave with? It was your movie star friend, some producer, and some other guy I didn't know. Movie star friend? Earl? God, why am I surprised you don't remember any of this? I mean, you were so drunk when saw you at the Formosa. Wait, you were at the Formosa? Yes, I slipped you that note when my date wasn't looking. You even joked about it. Huh. And he's just thinking, Charlie, maybe you should think about getting out of this place too. And, like you just feel like the plot thicken, like there's bigger things going on. And by the way, there's other people who know, because in the way this book started off, it was just Charlie. And then Charlie spilled the beans to his friend Gil, which is why we're in trouble right now, because Gil, of course, can't stop and do nothing. But we as a reader didn't know that there were other people involved. And he doesn't even remember who's involved because he was wasted. So I thought that was maybe I'm wrong. I haven't read the later issues yet, but it feels like that it kind of peeled the layer of the onion back. Like, oh, there's more still. But wait, there's more. Am I on the right track?
Is it
I think
possible?
that you don't get the track revelation to like the last pages, so we're gonna keep guessing to the end.
Now, did you say that she slipped him a note the night that Val died?
That's what she said.
Okay, because if you go back to issue 7, he clearly hands him a card. Is it possible that he just found the note like 6 issues later?
So what I was thinking, Breen, was because I looked at the panel again because I thought it was a card too, because he says like we have to set up a meeting. But I looked at it; it could also be the note folded, and then my interpretation is that maybe at some point when he was blacked out drunk, this guy took the note or something like that.
Well, the writing's awfully small on the thing he's putting in his pocket. It's I don't know. It's just something to ponder for the next 2 weeks.
I mean, he definitely doesn't pull out a card from the guy, and he seems confused about the note. So it's 2 and 2. He just saw the guy. The guy just put something in his pocket. He just pulled something out of his pocket. So it's ambiguous, like we were saying earlier. That's what's so great about the series.
I thought there was a line where the comments that he thought he was given a card, but it turned out to be a note. Like he actually even comments on that, but I can't remember where that was. So if anyone's in the chat, of course, has key in on any special information without spoiling anything in the future, by all means, be happy to do so, or here. I seem to remember that there's a comment about like, oh, he slipped his card in my pocket, but it turned out it was a note, and I thought this was it, but again, I don't think it is. Oh yeah, right here. Why did Drake Miller have given him this note instead of his card? He thought the guy was trying to intimidate him. So he thought he was getting a card, like, hey, here's my card, but it was actually a note. That's how I saw it. Now, whether this guy basically gave him the note that Tina had originally given him, that's kind of maybe what I'm thinking now. Like, he's like, you gave me a note? Like, I don't know, I was wasted. And then Horn Rim Glasses guy finds that note and basically like re-gives it to him. I'm thinking that's what may have happened, but there's still a lot to be revealed.
Yep.
So
love this damn
I love this book. And it's weird because I love it for, I don't want to say completely different reasons than the other books, but all of the Ed Brubaker books I've read thus far have always really gripped me on the plot, like what's going on. I care about the plot line. This book is completely just character driven for me. I mean, there is compelling plot hooks, like, oh, what's this note? Who's the Horn Rim Glasses guy? But I don't actually know what the plot is. I just know there's a girl dead, things are happening, and the characters are on this journey, and I'm on it with them. But I don't necessarily care because I just love these characters, and I just want to see where fate takes them.
It really is. One of the things that I want to share quickly before we get out of here is that at the end of every issue, there is like a old school kind of poster or photo of like something that was relevant to the story at the time. So in the very last issue, since Charlie started to think that obviously because of what Tina has said, that Earl Rath was with them and might also be a part of it. We have Earl Rath in the Deadly Sands poster. At the end of the third issue, since Charlie had that interaction with Drake Miller, and Drake Miller, said, "Hey, I'm a studio head. I really liked your writing. If I forget what movie it was. Oh, I think it was Citizen Kane. If Citizen Kane hadn't come out there, your movie at the end, would have won and swept, like the whatever award nominations. And then we get a picture of Charlie's movie that he wrote, at the end, with like the different actors. So like every single issue ends with some poster or picture that's relevant to.
Yes, we also had
something
one
going
with
on there.
Flapjack Jones as a child actor.
Yeah, Flapjack.
And then what's interesting though is the
Mhm.
ones that are from like 1909 or something before the war.
Mhm.
They're like camp picture films. And then the
Mhm.
ones that are from like the late 30s or 40s, they say Victory Street pictures. So it's also just interesting how it shows like camp, had his own empire at some point back in the earlier days, and they had to like merge and monopolies and stuff like that. So just an interesting detail how it shows that even the metadata of like the producer of the film in those posters changes by the date.
Yep, very like great attention to detail, and offers like a historical weight, to these, one-page pieces of media. They really, kind of come right out of the story. So good call out, Nalo. Good point.
Well, folks, looks like we've wrapped up tonight's CriminalCast. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a fantastic book. It's only Act 2 of a greater story. We're going to do Act 3 in probably, 2 weeks, you guys? Does that sound right? 2 weeks from...
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So we'll come back. Please read these books if you are not. If you are reading them, awesome. You're probably right there with us. We love your comments. In this particular format, we don't have the time to go through them all in the air, but we do, respond in the chat. And if you're listening on the podcast, sorry, there's no chat available to you, but come listen to us live and read the books. You have plenty of time, 2 weeks, to get all caught up for the grand finale of this wonderful book. If you don't want to go out and purchase the full thing for whatever reason, you can get these on Comixology right now. I am waiting to find the big deluxe hardcover of this. It's currently not in print. So I am reading them on Comixology Unlimited, and you can get the whole series there. It's $5.99 a month. It's a great tool to explore lots of different books and find the ones you really love before you throw a ton of money down. This is a book. I want all the Ed Brubaker books in hardcover. I love them that much. I just want to see them on a bookshelf. These are like the gold standard for me when it comes to comics. Do you guys have any final statements before we close shop?
I love this book.
I'm just gonna say, I had such a good day at the comic book reading trough that this might not have been the best thing I read today.
What?
Wow.
I also
What did you
read
read? What did you read? Let's do some comic book day stuff before we end, real quick.
the Death of Captain Marvel.
Oh my God.
Not the Carol Danvers one that we're all rooting for, but the original.
Yeah.
We're doing that tomorrow night on I Love Comics, and
Oh,
I gotta tell you what, I read that for the first time. I mean, I first read that 39 years ago now, and I still choked up a couple times.
Me too. It's my favorite comic of all time. Number one favorite comic of all time. And I can never, I try to read it every year on my birthday, and I can never read it without choking up or getting misty eyed.
Why don't you join us tomorrow night then?
Okay. Yeah. Let's chat after. Tell me the times. I would love to.
I think it's 9:00. It's pretty much just us and a couple other people, so they can listen in. Because they might want to tune in. It should be
great.
Sometime between 9 and 10. Unfortunately, we do tend to run on Eglantine Standard Time.
So when you're saying 9 or 10, you're talking about Eastern Time, just for the audience.
Yeah. I said it's man, I'll tell you what, it does pack an emotional punch.
I need to read this book. Anything that can be brought up as equivalent or even better than this it's got to be, an excellence. And definitely Captain Marvel.
You notice I didn't get shot down by the other person that's read it.
Oh no, I mean I've never heard anything bad about that book. It's just one of the ones that's never made it across my plate. I was never a Captain Marvel guy because I never really experienced it. I mean, when I got into comics, he was already dead.
Yeah,
You know?
and unlike everybody other not named Uncle Ben, he stayed dead.
Right. And but it's one of those bucket list books that I really just need to get to. 'Cause...
Definitely, it's you will not be sorry.
Nalo, what any final thoughts?
I think that this was like you said, perfect act 2. It's kind of was muddy because all the pieces are in place, and I'm really excited to do act 3.
All right, well,
and I'll probably have a lot of the floppies by then. Hopefully that'll be delivered.
All right,
keep them dry, brother.
I cannot wait to do this again. These Brubaker books, I want to dive in and just like binge them all and read them, but I'm resisting. I'm trying to be trying to show restraint because I want this to last. Like I these are so good, and I can't tell you guys enough. If you are following us, you're just listening in because you're curious, you haven't read them yourself, don't let us spoil them. I'm telling you, man, this is some of the best stuff out there. If you like comic books, even if you go, man, noir is not my thing, well, this is some of the best noir that you're ever going to read. So maybe you just haven't read good enough before. That's my thing. And like I said, you can pick up almost any of these books. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to have any particular starting point if you don't want to. But we're going to wrap this up. Thank you for my awesome co-hosts that I love speaking with, Eric, Nalo, Skip, and Tosh. Thank you for being here and doing this with me. I'm Ash, and we'll see you again next time.
Good night, kids.